Steven Universe and all associated images are property of Cartoon Network, Rebecca Sugar, and any and all other respective owners. I don't know them all. All footage in this video has been used for the purpose of critique parody under fair use. Please support the official release. Well, that was a big couple of theories the last couple of weeks, wasn't it? And quite possibly the most interesting thing about those videos is I could probably make 10 more videos on the subject and still not burn through all the information that we've gotten in the series. In fact, if you guys haven't been over to my Tumblr recently, I do share my videos there, and when I did share my latest video about the cultural impact of gems over there on my Tumblr, I included a list of a bunch of the stuff that I had to cut from the video for time. So if you're curious about some of the stuff that could have gone into that video that I had planned to put into it, head on over there and check it out. I'll leave a link in the description below. That said, I was looking for something a little more concise this week, so I have decided to focus on another theory compilation video. This is a new sub-series of theories that I started for my 40,000 subscriber milestone, where I put together 3 to 5 smaller theories into one video, ones that aren't quite justifying of their own videos. And this week we have 2 mini-theories about Rose and 1 mini-theory about Steven. And for our first mini-theory about Rose, we're going to go back to the Pyramid Temple from Serious Steven. Yeah, I know. Keep going. I know we talk about this place a lot, but it is important. The imagery here is more extensive than any gem imagery we've seen anywhere else in the series, and it has yet to be satisfactorily deciphered, which is actually what I'm going to talk about today. A lot of people have read this central mural as Rose fighting another gem, possibly even a diamond, but now we know that the diamonds are much larger in scale compared to Rose, that if this drawing is done to scale, and it was drawn by gems, so we can assume that it is, that her opponent simply cannot be a diamond. People have also made note of this diamond-shaped object that she seems to be holding, assuming that it was some kind of weapon or the representation of some sort of power, and was actually a big reason why I thought for a long time that Rose was Pink Diamond. I thought that this was some visual representation of her using her authority as a diamond to oppose the other diamonds. Now I don't think so anymore, and I know others have talked about this theory before. I just want to get my opinion of it out there into the world. Ever since Message Received, people have started to look at this mural very differently, because in Message Received we see a very similar object, and it's a communication device, one used to communicate with the diamonds. Regardless of where they are, it seems to be able to contact whichever diamond you select when you're turning the 2 halves of the diamond-shaped device in order to activate it. And we also know that these are devices that were much more commonly in use back before the war, as one is just sitting in the control room at the moon base, and yet Yellow Diamond acts as if the use of one of these things is completely unheard of nowadays. So the idea is that Rose isn't using her powers as a diamond or her authority as a diamond or some yet unknown diamond-shaped weapon to fight someone. She's using one of these diamond communicators to contact someone. And it fits with the other imagery in this mural. We have what I have theorized to be humans standing around Rose, representing the fact that she is on Earth and that she is speaking for Earth. And around the supposed diamond figure, here in holographic form, talking to Rose, we have these gem shapes, representing that this diamond is on Homeworld and speaking for Homeworld. If this diamond has appeared in the form of a hologram, then scale isn't an issue. It doesn't matter that the 2 figures seem to be the same size, because one of them is a hologram. And if you'll allow me a bit of speculation, I think I know when this happened. I think that this was Rose's last attempt to make somebody listen to her before declaring all-out war on Homeworld. I think that she had managed to survive as a guerrilla fighter for a while, that she had amassed a bit of an army in the form of gems who had become disheartened with Homeworld and seen Rose and her crystal gems as an alternative, and I think she was ready to declare all-out war. I think she made one last attempt to reach out to someone of authority on Homeworld and negotiate for peace, and the negotiations failed. Now, just to break things up, let's talk about my theory about Steven next. And once again, as it seems to be a bit of a trend in these theory compilation videos already, my theory about Steven focuses a bit on Steven's biology. Specifically, the biology revolving around his unique form of gem shapeshifting. For all intents and purposes, Steven shouldn't be able to shapeshift. The gems can only shapeshift by reorganizing their hard-light bodies into something else. And yet, Steven can still do it, which means that his version of shapeshifting happens on a biological level, on a cellular level. Somehow the joining of Rose's information with Greg Universe's DNA created a happy medium where Steven is able to literally reorganize the cells of his body into something else. That's not up for debate. It happens in the show a couple of times. It even technically happens when he fuses with Connie. What I want to talk about here is the extent to which Steven can shapeshift. whether or not he is able to shapeshift as completely as other gems. And while I doubt he could make himself larger or smaller, conservation of mass is a thing after all, I think that anything near enough to his own size range, he could shapeshift into. Any biological thing. Whatever he turned into would still be made up of biological components. So, animals, basically. Which is fine, since that seems to be what the gems turn into the most, is animals. But how completely could he transform himself into those animals? Some people have suggested that since his shapeshifting in cat fingers was on such a small scale, he could never actually transform his entire body. Well, first of all, that's absolutely ridiculous, because he already did that. When he fused with Connie, he broke down not only his body, but hers as well, into base components and recombine them into a new person. So clearly he can affect his entire body at once. That again isn't up for debate. It happened. But could he transform his entire body into the body of a completely different species? Does he have that much control over the transformation? Well, at this point, no. He's too inexperienced with the process. But that doesn't mean he couldn't do it. Yes, the cats that he created out of his fingers in cat fingers were very small. But he still created complete cats out of his fingers. Complete cats with eyes, ears, brains, teeth, mouths, their own bone structures, stomachs, and internal organs, out of just the flesh in his finger. And he did so without even meaning to. That's absolutely insane. In some ways, his shapeshifting may be superior to that of regular gem shapeshifting. Once he gets a handle on it, there's absolutely no reason to assume that Steven wouldn't be able to turn into realistic animals just so long as those animals remained about his size. Unless he has the ability to either expand or reduce the distance between the molecules in his body, but that's the fringiest of fringe science, and I don't want to talk about it today. Point is, at this point, there is no reason to assume that Steven's shapeshifting is significantly lessened compared to that of regular gem shapeshifting. On a similar vein to a question about shapeshifting, the final theory that I want to touch on today, another theory about Rose, focuses on gem fusion. We've seen Alexandrite twice now in the series, and both times, it was very obvious that the personalities of Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl didn't mesh within Alexandrite. They were all still distinctly present, and even carried on little internal arguments with each other. And I'm willing to bet that it was this disharmony that caused Alexandrite to be less effective than she probably should have been in her fight with Malachite. Which is actually where I got the idea for this theory specifically. It wasn't until Steven showed up with his Watermelon Stevens and rallied Alexandrite that she was able to pull herself together and strike the final blow. What if Rose was something similar to the Crystal Gems? These Crystal Gems specifically, during their time on Earth after the war. What if she was something of a rallying and unifying factor, but in a much more literal sense since she could actually fuse with them? The Temple statue, also known as the Temple Fusion, is very clearly meant to represent a fusion of Rose, Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl. That's not really something that's up for debate, despite the fact that people still argue against it every single day. I mean, come on, people. This has been the intention since the pilot episode, where it was much more clear exactly whose gemstones those were on the statue. Since the conception of the show, the Temple statue was always intended to be this fusion. A fusion which I propose didn't have the split personality problem that Alexandrite does. I think that when those same gems that form Alexandrite, Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl, came together with Rose as well, their personalities actually unified, actually merged together into a single mind. And the best evidence I have for that is actually Alexandrite's weapon, or should I say weapons. She can summon any of the individual weapons of any of her components as well as any of the weapons used by fusions created from her components, but she doesn't seem to be able to fuse all three weapons together into a single weapon that is all her own. If she were able to do so, I guarantee that that weapon would be a sword, especially since we've already seen the sword, or a statue representing it. Back in Bubble Buddies and then again in Ocean Gem, we saw a giant stone sword at the bottom of the ocean off the beach in front of Steven's house that is clearly intended to be part of the Temple statue. It is very clearly intended to be the Temple Fusion's weapon. But looking at the details, it only seems to be made from Garnet's gauntlets, Pearl's spear, and Amethyst's whip. Rose's shield isn't included in there at all, which suggests that the Temple Fusion wielded a sword as well as Rose's shield. So technically speaking, Alexandrite's weapon should be the same sword. And yet Alexandrite can't form that sword while the Temple Fusion can. Rose's presence literally allowed them to unify their efforts and create a combination weapon from their three distinct weapons. And I think that this is a representation through fusion of the fact that the gems were much more in sync with each other when Rose was around, that they were a much more effective team. We've seen several instances over the course of the series of the crystal gems being outright dismissive of possible dangers, because as powerful as Garnet is, and as good a leader as she is in certain situations, overall, she is not the best possible leader for this team that there could be. Now, I don't think Rose was the perfect leader either, but I think that she filled in the gaps, so to speak. Guys, what did you think about any of these theories that I presented for you today? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. Either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later. Do you have a theory idea or merely a musing about the show that you'd like me to discuss? You can head on over to my Facebook page and send me a message detailing your ideas, and if I find them interesting enough, I'll be sure to respond. Or you could head on over to my Tumblr page and send me an ask. If it's not something that I've covered before, I'll be sure to answer. If you are on Facebook or Tumblr, I also recommend that you like and or follow me there as well to keep up to date on all of my content, as well as any supplementary content that I might post on either of those sites. And if you know anyone on Facebook or Tumblr who might find my content interesting, please share it with them. I'd really appreciate it.